According to the Hindu mythology, Lord Parashurama, the great sage warrior, needed a place for his penance where waves from the sea hit the shore. And the sea god refused this. Enraged by this act, Lord Parashurama took a bow and shot the bow in the air, and the place from where he stood until where the arrow landed is considered to be Goa. However, this is what the mythology says, and there is no proper evidence for that. It's worth noting that it's not an easy feat to establish facts backed by research, evidences, and data. When you do, it's like pouring life into the history of events from 1,000 years ago. Considerable research, documentation, and other inscriptions were referred to, and here are some of the interesting things research resulted in. Keeping the Parashurama episode aside, prior to the spread of the Aryan culture, this was called Goa by the early settlers like the Gavdas. These settlers might have brought areca or betel nuts, as you call them, to Goa. Therefore, it's quite likely that Goa is the most ancient name of Goa, denoting the land of betel nuts. Another theory states that Mandui, which is the major river in Goa, this river was popular by the name Gomati. It is believed that the state of Goa has received the name Gomantak from Gomati. Innumerable iterations have been undertaken to identify the dynasties that ruled Goa. For the longest time, it was believed that the history of Goa could be tracked back until the Chalukya rulers, until more and more literature, evidences in the form of copper plate inscriptions were found. Copper plates? Copper plates are usually records of grants of land or royal lineages carrying the royal seal, which identify the period these belong to, and they also help you trace back to the lineage of kings or kingdoms that ruled a particular place. These establish the connection in tracing the Goan history back to the Mauryan dynasty. Taking a look at the political history is very important, as political history has been called as the backbone of history. It is believed that if political history is the skeleton, cultural history is the flesh and blood which cover the skeleton. Hence, an attempt is made to survey briefly the political history of Goa. Till 1938, it was assumed that the history of Goa commenced with the southern Silharas, until copper plates were found that traced us back to the Bhoja dynasty. It seems that Bhojas as well as Maghas came from Iran to India. Both were worshippers of Surya, the sun god. Maghas were instrumental in spreading sun worship in ancient India. They did not assimilate themselves in the Indian society, nevertheless. However, the Bhojas were absorbed into the Indian society, and in some regions of India, they also became rulers. Inscriptional evidences of the sun worship to date in Arvalam confirms that. After the rule of minor dynasties like Bhojas and the Konkan Mauryas, the first major dynasty to establish themselves on the coast was the Chalukyas of Badami. Chalukyas ruled for about 200 years. Then came the Silharas, then came the Kadambas. The origin of Kadamba is still clouded in mystery. The only evidences were the copper plates found that bore the emblem of the Kadamba dynasty. During the time of Kadambas, their territory extended from Thana in the north to parts of Karnataka and also present districts of Belgaum and Dharwad. However, the Kadambas had become weak in the middle of the 13th century. They could not face the Yadavas of Devagiri. Here is another interesting fact. Malik Kafur, the general of Alauddin Khilji, destroyed the capital of Goa and Kadambas. Subsequently, the Kadambas had to shift the capital to Chandrapur, which is the modern-day Chandor. A few years later, Muhammad bin Tughlaq destroyed Chandrapur. But it should be noted that the entire Goa was not under either the Delhi Sultans or the Bahmani Sultanate. The last dynasty which ruled Goa was the Vijayanagara dynasty, headquartered at Hampi in the Bellary district of Karnataka. There was a rivalry between the Vijayanagara and the Bahmani Sultanate. Both of them were major powers, and they wanted to control the west coast. Goa was the port from where Arabian horses were imported that formed the cavalry of the Vijayanagara Empire. The Vijayanagara took Goa, and subsequently Adil Shah of the Bijapur Sultanate captured Goa, and Goa remained with them until 1510. So this is a brief history of before the Portuguese came to Goa. When did the Portuguese come? What were the series of fights that took place? What happened to Goa after Adil Shah took over? In the next episode, my name is Casey. You're watching History Undone.